2024. Mr. Canty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This meeting of Plymouth Select Board is taking place in a hybrid format. Members of the board are joining us here in person at the Great Hall of Town Hall. Members of the board may in the future join us virtually over the Zoom webinar platform. We have the Zoom webinar platform login information on our agenda that is posted on the town website. Members of the public who wish to participate in this meeting may join us physically in person at Town Hall or over the Zoom webinar platform. Members of the public may also view this meeting on Comcast Channel 9 or Verizon Channel 47. And this modified format is consistent with modifications made to the open meeting law by the legislature of the Commonwealth. We also remind members of the public and viewers, per Massachusetts general law, any person may make a video or audio recording of an open session of a meeting of the Select Board after notifying the chair, subject to reasonable requirements of the chair, so as to not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, the chair shall inform other attendees of any recordings. We are currently aware of recordings being made by the local scene, formerly known as PAC TV, and that is all. Mr. Chairman, at this time, I would read the executive session language. The Select Board will hold an executive session pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Clause 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, namely in the matter of Holtec Decommissioning International, LLC, pending in the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, Office of Appeals and Dispute Resolution, OADR, docket 2024-025. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the town. While we are in executive session, the board will also vote to approve executive session minutes from June 11th and August 20th. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we enter into executive session to return at approximately 6 p.m.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Canty, second by Mr. Golden. Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Blutzer?
Yes.
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And myself, yes. We'll be returning approximately 6 p.m. Thank you. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is a public hearing. It's just a change of ownership of interest. In accordance with Chapter 138 of the Massachusetts General Laws as amended, notice is hereby given that a public hearing will be held at Plymouth Town Hall, 26 Court Street, Plymouth, on Tuesday, September 17, 2024, at 6 p.m. to consider the application for a change of ownership interest from the Artesian Pig LLC doing business as the Artesian Pig, 66 Court Street, Andrew Rivera Myers, manager, holder of a annual all-alcohol restaurant license, 66 Court Street. Description of the premises is as follows. First floor with a single room, 2,700 square feet dining room, bar, 2 entrances, 2 exits, outdoor seating on the sidewalk against the building, and it's cordoned off parking spaces in front of the building, and use of the sidewalk to travel from the restaurant to the parking spaces. Anyone wishing to be heard on this matter should plan to attend this meeting. I now declare this hearing open. Anyone wishing to speak in favor? No one online, Chris?
Yes, there is. Matthew Porter.
Mr. Porter?
Yes, good evening, Board. Matthew Porter, I'm the attorney for Artisan Pig. So, as you stated before the Board, this is just a transfer of ownership. The Board has actually already approved this. There were some issues with the application itself, so we've just made some corrections to appease the ABCC. It's the same exact transfer of ownership to the husband and wife team that are currently operating it, so no other changes.
Right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to this application? And like he said, it's just a change. So, wish of the board?
I'll make a motion that we approve this.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Bletzer, second by Mr. Canty. Discussion? Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Bletzer?
Yes,
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And myself, yes, and I now declare this hearing closed. Unanimous.
Thank you, Board.
thank you.
We're moving on to the administrative notes. There's 8 of them. Any questions? Or the board doesn't, what's the wish of the board, I guess I should say?
If my colleagues do not have any questions, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we approve administrative notes 1 through 8 as a group.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Canty, second by Mr. Bletzer for administrative notes 1 through 8. Discussion. Seeing none, Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Bletzer?
Yes,
Mr. Golden?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Unanimous. Agenda items, Article 9, Housing. Mr. Bradley, and I believe Mr. Vayo's here also. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Chairman and the Board, anybody at home and the residents watching. My name is Ed Bradley. I'm the Chairman of the Community Preservation Committee for Plymouth. We're bringing before you tonight some articles to go to fall annual town meeting. One of them is Article 9 is affordable housing, and Mr. Vayo is here to answer any specific questions you have for it. But the grant request is for $3.2 million. And there's 24 units, new construction to be built on South Street. This is opposite the library right now. As a matter of fact, if you walked out the library's main doorway and follow that sidewalk down, directly across the street is the driveway that goes into the existing homes that are there. In this agreement, 4 of the units will be 60% AMI, and the other 20 will be 80% AMI. Again, it's new construction. One-bedroom units that we have a need for. I'll bring Mr. Vayo up so we can make a quick presentation to you, or?
Sure.
Sure, okay.
Thanks, Chief Bradley, and thanks to the board for having us here. So I'll give you the sort of 50,000-foot view, and then we can
Just
dive in.
identify yourself.
Oh, sorry.
We all know who you are, but.
Rick Veo from Meg Ryko. So there's very few properties left in town that are sort of uniquely designed to house what I would call a small cluster of multifamily, but specifically in this case, affordable housing. Those clusters get eaten up pretty quick. They're typically market rate. We saw an opportunity on this piece to create a unique small cluster of affordable housing, which I think in our estimation is the best way to go in terms of affordable housing. I'm not a fan of the 40Bs. You would never see us bringing something like that forward, and I'm not a fan of even a large 300, 400 unit having a great deal of affordable housing because of what you see in terms of problems and lack of management, for a better term. So we focus on these smaller developments. There's very few pieces of land left to be able to do this. This is a unique site that, if we don't take advantage of, will ultimately be developed as market rate. So this site, to me, is the perfect site out of all of the ones we've done so far, because it is walkable to downtown, it's walkable to the P&B bus, it is walkable to shopping, it's walkable to medical, it's walkable to the school, it has the Gatra bus line there. It's just just the perfect location. We haven't done anything in that immediate area. To refresh the board's memory, as I'm sure you know, but I do like to remind you that Meg Ryko, in conjunction with the Affordable Housing Trust and the CPC, over the last 5 or 6 years has created in excess of 70 units of voluntary affordable housing. Not as part of a, we needed 10% or we were proposing a 40B and we had to do 25%. We've created over 70 units. That's more voluntary affordable housing than all other developers in Plymouth combined over that time period, and probably over the last 10 years. So we're pretty proud of that track record. We continue to bring projects forward. We know there's always some controversy around them. There's a NIMBY aspect to of affordable housing, but I think if you look at the projects we've created, and you go from our market rate units to our affordable housing complexes, you'll see no difference in the management style. You'll see no difference in our policies. You'll see no difference in our landscaping and our amenities and whatnot. And we're very proud of that. We think that's the way affordable housing should be done. The other thing we don't do is, for lack of a better way of putting it, build crap. And there's a lot of people out there that do that and would continue to do that. We could ask for less money from the CPC or the Affordable Housing Trust and build what I would term as marginal units. We don't. We build units that we think people are proud to be in. There's luxury vinyl plank flooring, there's stainless steel appliances, there's quartz counters, there's laundry in the units, et cetera, et cetera. And we think that's the way to go. This particular one compared to Brookside, which is down on State Road, and compared to Carver Road, again, I think is probably our best to date, just because of the location and because of things we've learned over the years. So we're very pro on this. The CPC application was originally for $3.6 million. The CPC came back to us and said, would you agree to 3.2? We did. We're putting in the extra funds to make that happen. Then we went to FinCom, and FinCom, after, I don't know, it felt like at least a 7.5-hour meeting. I don't think it was quite that long, but it was a very lengthy meeting. Asked us to bring 4 of the units down to 80%, and we did that. And then with some discussion with other town members and a selectman, they asked, could we push this a little bit further, and could we bring 2 of those 60s down to 30? And we have agreed to do that. And sorry for you being, because you're the last person to know that, sorry. So the development would now be 20 units at 80%, 2 units at 60%, and 2 units at 30, which is, I think, is a nice mix. There's been, here and there comments of, why does Meg Ryko keep doing this? Why are they getting the funds? Why? Someone else, please step up. this is not our main line of work, is affordable housing. We do this as part of what we try to give back to the town. We do a tremendous amount of work with, animal rights and wilderness protection and whatnot, not just locally, but nationwide and actually in Africa too, with elephant things and whatnot. But the other thing we do is focus on affordable housing. We think we've developed a phenomenal program that has, again, created more housing than anyone else. And that program isn't just the ability to come in here and ask for money and then be able to build the units effectively, because that we do very well. But the second piece of that, and probably the most important piece, is our ability to manage them. And whether we, were to sell the units or keep the units, we end up still managing them, and we manage them, I would say, damn near perfection. The staff we have in-house that does that, whether they're getting calls in the middle of the night for thermostat not working, or whether someone needs assistance with raft funding because they may have lost their job, we have the pieces in place to make all that happen. And no one else does, and I think that's probably why other people don't step up, because they look at it and say, yeah, we could build it, but can we actually manage it and keep this going? All of that said, we do see that there's now room going forward beyond this project to, I'm going to say, start morphing what we're trying to do. And we've been working on this for a number of years, back till 3 years ago when we started talking to Senator Moran about it, about doing some, what I would call starter home developments and pieces like that. So I think over the next couple of years, you'll see us come back with what I would term as some bigger and stronger projects that can address some family needs and things like that, and have both an ownership and a rental component. But for right now, and I know the CPC spends a lot of money, and they spent a lot of money on affordable housing, it's very important we don't stop the train. And someone on the FinCom said, I think we should just not do this, we should wait, let a new program develop over the next few years and whatever. And that's great when you're sitting in your living room saying that. But to the person who doesn't have housing and desperately needs of housing and desperately wants to stay in Plymouth, the argument just doesn't hold water. And these units, amongst the other ones we've done, they work well, and we're hoping to get the select board's support and hoping this goes through town meeting. So more than happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Blutzer?
Yeah, hi, Rick, thank you. Just a couple of questions. You said you manage them, you don't have on-site management, do you?
Well, we don't have, because of the number of units, we don't need a physical
On-site,
person
yeah.
on site. But we do have on-site management in Plymouth, and that's at
Right.
22.5 Whiting Street,
get
our
you.
headquarters. And all of the properties we own. We get calls literally every month from surrounding towns to say, will you come do a program like this here?
Right.
To date, we've turned them all down because I said, we have our hands full in Plymouth, and honestly, when our maintenance person or our property manager or whoever can step out the door and be at the property in 7 minutes, it means a lot.
And I've seen your other projects, and your landscaping, you do a great job. And I'm sure that's one of the concerns the neighborhood might have. But I don't really have concerns for where that project is. I think it's a great location, easy access to Route 3, easy access to the Center on Active Living. If you have some elderly folks in there, they could actually walk there. And then easy access down South Street, right to the downtown. So it's a great location, plus the public transportation. Question I have, I know you're asking for 3.2, and I've had somebody say to me that, well, why should we pay to build that whole thing, and then he reaps the benefits of the rentals? The magic question, what's the cost of this project?
The overall cost of the project is $8.2 million. Basically, it boils down to, in round numbers, without talking about every single number in the project, the cost of drywall or whatever, you spend about, any given project could be somewhere between $70,000 and $100,000 a unit on land and infrastructure to create that. Sprinkler connections in the street, new sewer connections, parking lots, et cetera, purchasing the land, closing costs, all of that. Construction costs are generally in the $240 a square foot range. I mean, it's just industry standards. And then on top of that, you have management, soft costs, all overhead and whatnot to construct the project. That's the basic breakdown. Do they vary? They do, and that's why sometimes you'll see the numbers that we come forward with to CPC vary. But that's the reality of it, and if anyone can do it less expensively, I would encourage
And
them
the
to
last
come
thing
forward.
is, a couple of meetings ago, our town manager was at a, somewhere with an expert on low-income housing and using CPC money. And this is absolutely the correct use. You working with private developers to do this. We know what it's like. We've made some mistakes trying to do it ourselves. It hasn't worked too well. So this is great use for it. And the last thing is one more thing, and I'm having a senior moment right now. I guess I'll get back to you on that. But,
I'll be here.
I am for this. I think it's the right thing to do. Oh, the last thing, it's not only affordable housing. When you get down to the 60 AMI, and especially the 30, that's subsidized housing. That really is. That's for folks that have low income and couldn't afford it. We know that 80 is still not really that affordable for some people, but certainly 30 is, and 60 is too. So that's why I'm for this project. So anyway.
Yeah, I think it creates a nice range in there.
Yep.
And I'm going to be honest, I mean, I've said this to FinCom and I said this to the CPC. None of it's affordable. But the
Well-
price of land, price of construction, and it's just the price of labor, everything. It's just
Well,
the realities of today.
Certainly 30 and 60 is getting there.
It's
and
getting
30,
closer,
yep,
yeah.
Yep, so we need that. Anyway, we keep talking about it, let's get it done, thank you.
If I could also talk about property management on his, McGregor's properties. As I was getting ready to retire and needed some smaller housing, I was building an in-law at my son's house, and for almost 2 years, I lived in one of McGregor's properties at 84 Aubrey Street, and the property management is the best that there is. And as far as using, public money, like CPC money for housing, it's the state coalition that recommends to us and to the town that we not put that money to a state or town entity, because you have to pay the prevailing wages and procurement laws. It's best to partner with a private person. It can be done more efficiently and much less costly. So this is the way to go, and this is what they're asking us to do.
Thank you.
If I could just follow up on that comment, because that was sort of jogged my memory, that's a good point, is that keep in mind that any project that you've done with a private developer, whether it's us or someone else, and any project going forward, it's one and done. The money put in is it. It's not the Housing Authority coming back 15 times because they can't manage their budgets. It's not the Housing Authority coming back and asking the state senator for $60,000 for a new roof 20 years from now. That's all taken care of. We put 10% away every month of our total operating budget for long-term capital improvements. That's roofs, that's things like that. It's also not going to be a half-completed project where there's no landscaping or there's no this or there's no that. It's completed, done, and the town never worries about it again. And it's not like it doesn't matter if I'm gone tomorrow or there's someone else here, whatever. It's deed restricted forever, and that's it. So it's a great model. Again, whether you're doing it with us or whether you're doing it with someone else, I mean, the model works, and it's proven, and I think it's backed by, as Chief Bradley said, by the state.
Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rick, do you do any kind of local preference for your properties?
We do in the original lottery. It gets a little sticky. There's a lot of talk of that, but then there's also discrimination laws and whatnot that fall into that. So we put that in our marketing plan, because remember, all of these have to go through a lottery that's governed by the artist formerly known as DHCD. I don't know what the acronym now is that they have, but that all goes through them and they approve it. So we always try to, typically what we've done, like we did on State Road, it was Plymouth, it was elderly, and it was veteran, and go from there. But the first lottery doesn't fill anything, and then it's just, you do have to go on a first come, first served basis after that.
Yep, understood. Thank you.
Mr. Mahoney?
Ed,
Yes.
so if we go back in time 6 months, we know that the committee sponsored 3 affordable housing articles. that the version that the committee voted on was different from what arrived at town meeting. And in my opinion, that was a breakdown. I can't even, that's inaccurate if I told you it was a breakdown in process. I don't think a process ever existed. So, just picking up on some of the points from Mr. Veo, and obviously the recent history here with Oak Street and, the articles at town meeting, the current CPC is looking at process and how to improve it and make sure the data that comes forward is completely accurate. So can you speak to, at the beginning of a potential article on affordable housing, talking to either a consultant or an advisor and what they can bring to the table to make sure that what occurred at Oak Street never happens again? Because, so that we know going in when we're voting on an article, the initial bite at the apple was, I think, 400,000 plus, but it should have been closer to 1 million. So can you just share with us what you've been working on?
After I became chair of the committee, I did get an email welcoming me to the state coalition, and in their email, he explained to me that housing is quite complicated, and obviously boards, especially if they're made up of volunteers, can't be expected to know all the questions to ask or what information we need to know that we can stand up and say, this is the best bang for our buck right now. So the CP should always request, to see information on pro forma and from the housing development, but those are kind of hard, difficult documents to decipher too. So we asked for some guidance from the state coalition, and they provided us, like I said, this information, and we have interviewed a consultant that's going to be coming on board for the CPC. A couple things are going to happen. That this consultant will help us rewrite the application specifically for the affordable housing, so that we're getting the right information the first time, and we're getting the correct information the first time. We did interview some people, and we have decided on LDS Consulting Group. They've got a really good reputation statewide, and this Lynn Sweet is known in that circle of having a good understanding of this. And they will be able to take these applications as they come in, ask the right questions, look at the pro forma, follow it all the way through, and tell us where the gaps are, if there are any. And, when we come forward from this time on with affordable housing, we will have an expert that can back up any of the recommendations that we're making, something that we didn't have before. But we're following guidelines from the state coalition that this is their recommendation.
That's a very positive development, Ed. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Canty?
Rick? So just to highlight a couple things with questions. So the original request was for a $3.6 million project, but you agreed to go down to 3.2 for the request?
Correct.
So that would be, on your side, you'd be eating that 400?
Correct.
And then when you went from 24 units at 80 to now 20 units at 80, 2 at 60%, 2 at 30%, you're eating those costs on your side?
Correct.
Okay. I just think I know you've received some criticism in the past from going to CPC multiple times. Personally, I don't understand that criticism. I mean, you're a local developer, a local company. I think you care about the community that you live in. And you're going above and beyond what you have to do to try and make that community better in a way that other developers are not. I've heard some people saying they don't want to do any more projects at 80%. They want to do 60 or lower. Always, I think that's unrealistic. That's going to I mean, the reason that 16C last spring was able to do that is they got federal and state funding to offset a lot of those costs. I'm sure if you had that available to yourself, you'd be doing that too, but they're a company that we're probably never going to see in this town again.
Right.
Whereas you're here, you've been doing this for a number of years, you're going to continue doing that. I think that should be highlighted and commended, not ridiculed. I just wanted to highlight that for the folks at home. So thank you, Rick.
Thanks. If I could just follow up on Mr. Mahoney's piece, is keep in mind this project or any of our projects or any private developer project, unlike what you saw on some of the, like Oak Street or some of these, no money is transferred until we have occupancy permits and deed restrictions in place. So it doesn't matter if this project goes wildly over budget and I lose my mind in the middle of it and completely screw this whole thing up, the town's not spending a penny. Because you have to have occupancy and deed restrictions in place before the check is written, and I think Lynn could confirm that. So I think that's a plus, because we should be held to task and deliver exactly what we said we would do. And thank you, Mr. Canty, for the comments.
I just have a question, so I understand this. This project here, looking for 3.2 million from the CPC?
Correct.
Okay. And what's the next one? How much money would that one, we're gonna be looking to?
The next one, meaning one I haven't proposed yet?
Yeah, that one. I'll tell you why I'm asking, because I believe that the town, through CPC, is on the hook right now for about 13 to 14 million. So we're gonna add this to it, that's 16.5 million by my math. And then the next project is about, John? Does, okay, so, already previous,
So that's already included in
Okay,
that. I
yeah.
thought you meant a future
No, no,
project.
no,
I was,
no,
I had a
no,
whole, I was
no,
gonna actually answer the question.
I'm just trying to wrap my hands around this, so I think I need to ask the finance director, at what point, are you not comfortable in borrowing? I mean, I think the conversation that I had with you were, if this is before this project, with what's already on the book, nothing to do with this, would take us 3.5 years just to pay it off. So I guess I asked you as a finance director from my chair, are you comfortable with this, going to 16.5? What's your, okay, that's enough number,
Yeah, I mean, I
guess.
think we're recommending these projects to you tonight. What I would recommend to the committee, and Ed and I have talked about it, is sort of going forward, you know, we're gonna strategize based on all of the projects that we have going on right now, which ones we can start to pay down, which ones that we may have to borrow short-term for. So there's just a lot of like strategy that we have to sort of work on depending on when monies are needed. You know, the fact that these projects, as Rick said, you know, we don't pay out until he has occupancy and the restrictions.
Right.
So that's, you know, down the road. So there's, you know, so we sort of like lie those types of things out just to make sure that cash flow and revenue that's coming in on an annual basis can address those things. So I think we're in a good position right now, but maybe put a pause on any, you know, huge, large ones for a little while, you know, until we get
And that's the
those.
only reason I'm asking, not to put
Yeah.
anyone on the spot, not to say that I don't support this.
Yeah,
but
no, I mean,
you
and
have
it's
to ask
hard
yourself
because all of
where,
a sudden
when.
something might come up, you know,
Right.
and you want to do it, you know, so I'm never going to say that you can't do it because you can. I mean, we have a debt limit and we're well within that debt limit, but, you know, you just want to work, everyone wants to sort of work together to make sure that, you know, we're going to get there, so,
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's just a question I fear that,
okay.
you know, I might as well ask because I know somebody's going to. And I didn't know all the answers, so knowing and hearing that it, you know, keep your eyes on it, keep our eyes on it as a
Yep.
town.
Yep.
So, that's all. Thank you very much.
Yep.
And I just want to ask Rick that, you know, we're revamping our regulations, if you will, our standards for going forward with the building committee and so on and so forth, and we probably could use some good sage advice from you if you have some time here and then. I know you're busy, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I have no problem. You probably have a smarter person available to you on the building committee, and that's my daughter, so she might.
Right, no, I thought she was, so we can go
Yeah,
through
but no, I'm
that,
more
but-
than
right.
happy to lend whatever we can, along with anyone else at our organization. If, you know, it can be helpful in any way, more than happy to. And just to quickly answer what I thought the question you were asking in terms of future projects, we probably won't come back based on feedback with a project very similar to what we're asking tonight, right? Because I think between where the CPC stands I think the tide that, you know, we really need to be at that 60% to make things work, if not 30. Everything needs to morph. Again, I don't think it's prudent to stop the train now, but I think as we move forward, we're going to morph. And what we'd like to see, and we've been working on this for a number of years. I go back about, I think it's either 3 or 4 years, so the first time I talked to Senator Moran about it, along with Matt Moratori and Kathleen Lenatra. But the idea of doing that starter home community, and it's not going to be something that can be fed exclusively by private development and the CPC or Affordable Housing Trust. It's going to need some state backing. It's going to need some creative densities involved. It could be a situation where the town is looking, and I had talked to JB way back when about this, that the town is looking for infrastructure funds to bring, say, a sewer line to where a development like this may go. So there's a lot of pieces that really have to come together to make something like that work. But that's kind of the next thing we're thinking. And it would be a much bigger scale, but I also think a much, much larger impact and have an ownership and a rental component. So that's in the, I wouldn't say in the back of our minds. It's on the forefront of what we're working on. It's just not ready for prime time.
Just almost finished. So, yeah, so when the governor was here a month and a half ago, she was at Indian Pond, and I went to the dinner. She talked very much in support, and if you watch the press conferences and the releases, she's very much for affordable
Absolutely.
housing. That's definitely on her radar. And I'm all with that, and I think that's what's gonna be the next phase, but I just want everyone to remember, and you touched on it just now, was the infrastructure. That's what I'm always asking the question about, because, you know, it's nice to have $4 billion for affordable housing, but I'd rather see it be $3 billion for infrastructure, and then we can do the thing, you just touched on it, so I think that's gonna be the next phase, as long as we keep that in mind, you know. And Chief, while you're here, and congratulations on your new spot. You know, when these town projects come up, you know, whether it be the renovation of a park or whatever it is, we always hear, or we always have heard, that, you know, the town DPW can do this and the town DPW can do that. Well, we're short a lot of people in the town DPW. And until we fill those positions, I'd like to see these projects come forward, at least as long as I'm sitting here, with that figured in as, even if the DPW, or if Mr. Coyle says he can do it, that's great. But before it gets to this desk, if not, have Plan B and have funds appropriated. So for the better of everyone, the project moves along. It ain't a 5-month project, a 5-year project, or a 2-year.
Yes.
You know, just figure it in, I mean, and let's get it done.
No, I agree
mean,
with you.
You know what I
That's-
mean?
yeah.
We can't promise, I mean, it's nice to think that, but
Yeah.
it's not realistic. And I'd rather have you come forward, at least as far as I'm concerned, and just put it on the table,
Okay,
you know?
you got it.
So.
Yeah.
Mr. Canty?
Lynn? So not in relation to this project per se, but just since the topic of the debt that the CPC has came up, do you offhand know, I mean, they're bringing in, what, like 4.1 million a year thereabouts?
Yeah, about 4 million a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
And do you know, like, roughly, I mean, I know they have some money that they spend on admin, they have to spend 10, 10, and 10 on some things, whether that's debt service or new project, but do you know, like, out of that 4 million that they're bringing in, currently with their debt that's on the books, what's the percentage of that 4 million that's going to pay the existing debt service? Roughly.
Well, so right now, the only project that we've actually borrowed for is Stevens Field, a very small portion of that project. And we borrowed a very, very small amount for Jenny Pond. So those two, and then we're going to be starting some of these larger housing projects that have a sort of a timeline of payments. So I can't say off the top of my head what percentage of that annual revenues is gonna go towards debt service. We're gonna try to do some pay down and
Yep.
not incur any debt, with some of that annual revenue.
Right, and that's what CPC has done historically, right? Is
Right.
like pay when they have the cash on hand.
Right.
Reduce the borrowing authority, pay with cash.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly, and try to minimize as much as the borrowing that we do. And when we do borrow, we're borrowing on a short-term basis, so we're only paying interest, we're not paying on any of that principal until we pay it down,
Right,
you know?
right.
So it's really hard to, I can't really say what the percentage
Sure.
is. You know, we're gonna be working on that, you know, going through in the fall for budget for the annual town meeting, you know?
But with the current projects on the books and if all of these were approved at the amounts requested, you're confident that they'd still be able to either through debt service or with the historic practice of paying for some or all of it in cash as the bills become due,
Yeah.
that they're in a sustainable position at present?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Mahoney?
Lynn and Ed. So just picking up on a point that the chairman just made, there have been some changes with respect to article construction. And in the past, we would dig into administrative funds for closing, for any infrastructure improvements post-closing hypothetically on a piece of land. And now we've changed that to go back to, or to institute a one-stop shopping kind of an article.
Yes.
So that we're purchasing a piece of land. We've got the sale price in there. We've added in legal fees, whatever we need to close. Is there antiquated piece of infrastructure on that land that we want removed? We go to Mr. Gould, he said, or Mr. Coyle, and he says, okay, to mitigate that, once we own that land, it's going to cost us X, Y, or Z. We incorporate that so that everything is there and it's not returning to the committee or digging into the administrative funds to put those things to bed.
Yes,
So
that's-
that is start to occur, correct?
Yes, that is starting to
Okay.
occur.
Even as
That's
far
another
as
significant improvement.
Even as far as signage goes, if we're gonna have signage on some of these pieces of property, those are gonna be as part of the article in the cost. We're not going back later on and funding it from the administrative costs.
All right, so one more question for Mr. Veo. What's your perfect world timeline, Rick, on this one? If approved?
If this, we go to the planning board next week, we go to the town meeting, and obviously precinct chair meetings and precinct meetings. Town meeting on the 19th of October. We would expect to start construction, let's just call it January 1. It's a year. We're talking about, January 26, best case scenario, to have it. And that's, assuming mild winter and,
Right.
no skeletons in the closet type of thing.
Right.
So,
So in theory, you may be able to survive until July of '26, which is the beginning of FY '27. Possibly, maybe.
It could stretch out. I mean, we've always worked with, Lynn and the CPC. If someone said, hey, we're going to make that payment here, we're not going broke tomorrow if
Right.
if the check doesn't come through at a particular moment, at least knock on wood. So.
Right, okay. So, as everyone knows, I'm the Select Board designee to the CPC, and I didn't support this one. And it's, it's not the individual, and it's not the project, it's the amount of debt. So we're currently sitting, as the chair said, we're at 13 million. We have 5 promises out there. I believe that it's possible one of those promises is 4 million. That's not due until July of '26, which might be the first, down in Red Brook, the first quote-unquote truly affordable investment that this community has made in affordable housing. The other one is the 3 million for the project up in the industrial park. That money is not committed until July of '25. You have $1 million outstanding for the dredging of Jenny Pond. I believe, Lynn, we have 1.8 to 2.2 due for the balance of Stevens Field. 1.8, 2.2? 1.8, okay, 1.8. And then Mr. Gould has a commitment for 3 million for, what are we calling that, Town Brook? Dave, what are we calling that? All the Town Brook infrastructure from the cul-de-sac at the end of Wilded Place down to Brewster Gardens, okay? So that's 13 million. So for the last few years, when interest rates were low, the rule of thumb was that whatever you were borrowing, if you were going to float it over 30 years, you were going to pay back $2 on every dollar you borrowed. Ms. Barrett has told us that the Community Preservation Committee can only bond for a maximum per state law of 20 years. So if we were going to float that $13 million over 20 years, our payment would be 1.3 a year. So times 20 comes out to 26 million. So under that scenario, you would pay back for $13 million of investment. On top of that, we would pay $13 million in interest and get nothing in return. So this one, of course, with the other two articles, if they're approved, brings us up to a $17 million exposure. And that was just a point that I couldn't go. I envision a scenario in the spring, I envision a scenario where the other two articles were approved, bringing us up to overall to roughly $14 million, and going into the spring, in theory, paying down Jenny Pond, paying off the balance of Stevens Field, bringing the committee's overall debt down to $11 to $11.4 million, and still having 1 to 2 on hand to do some other things if needed, and just showing the taxpayers that we've peaked and that we're now trending downhill. And that's where I was at on that one.
Yes, John, and that's the reason I asked the finance director, the reason I asked her a while back, because I just didn't know the answer where we were. And when you sit in the chair, you need to know. And I have sat on previous boards where we have, I don't know if you were on the board then or not, I know Ken was the chairman, Mr. Tavares, and we halted all CPC borrowing until we paid some of the debt down. So, I mean, that's why I was trying to ask her not to put her on the spot, but I did ask these questions, not because of any project, it's something to do with these gentlemen at all. But, you know, where's the cutoff line for the debt, and where's the responsibility?
One of the things that's, you know, it's tough in affordable housing is that there's just certain opportunities that come up. There's certain pieces of land. I mean, you all know that. And that's, I recognize, you know, what you're saying and the debt level and whatnot, but then I also recognize that it's very important that we keep the momentum going. And, you know, where is the cutoff line? It's everyone's opinion, obviously. And I certainly respect that. Just as a point of clarification, and I know, you know, you were referencing the Red Brook project when you said that a true investment in affordable housing. Right, is that the Red Brook?
I think that's a discussion that can be made, an argument that can be made.
No, I'm not.
It was non-traditional. It was something different, Rick, and I.
Correct, and I don't necessarily disagree with the statement that was money well spent. But just for clarity, because there's been a lot of misconceptions, I spent an hour on this on the FinCom meeting of trying to get everyone on the same page, is that, you know, someone said, well, look at what we spent on Red Brook and we got 52 apartments. You didn't get that. What you got was buying down those apartments. They were obligated. If the town meeting and everyone had said, nope, we're not giving a dime, they were still obligated to build those as affordable housing. So there's a big difference, and that's why the number is so much greater, because what we're asking for is to build units that would otherwise not be built. And so I pointed out just because, again, there's been a lot of misconceptions out there, and I understand the numbers are different, but there's a reason, because one is a buy down, one is actually purchasing a unit that would otherwise not get built. So.
Any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, the wish of the board? Mr. Canty?
I would make a motion that we recommend town meeting approve Article 9.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Canty, second by Mr. Golden. Discussion, Mr. Golden?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Rick, for being so accommodating. I know that there's been a number of folks, both in public meetings and in private discussions, that have influenced the makeup of this project, and I think you're stepping up to the task at hand. So I plan to vote in favor of this. I think it's important to note that there's as Mr. Veo said, there's not only a component of this where we're buying deed restrictions, but he's also putting some of his own money on the line to buy down those units.
Mr. Blitzer?
I agree with
Canty?
Mr. Golden. And if there are developers out, this is a good use of CPC money, but if there are developers out there that think they can build affordable housing without using public money, I welcome you. Please do that. I'm not sure it can be done, but if so, we welcome them, because we do. We need affordable housing in this town. And we've been told by experts that CPC use it with private developers. That's the best use for, if you're going to build low-income housing with public funds. So anyway, thank you.
So I'm also going to be voting in favor of this. I think, 3.2 million, 24 units, you're looking at a cost per unit of 133, and 3 repeating, 133,000. So that's pretty good for CPC. It's not, is it as good as the Grantham? No, but that had federal and state funding backing that up. That's very different. That's the first time we've seen anything like that, maybe the last time we see something like that. It's certainly better than some other affordable housing projects that we've seen in Plymouth. And I think that should be commended. I think it is notable that the developer here is eating some of the costs throughout this project from what was initially proposed to multiple renegotiations down from 3.6 to 3.2, down from 80% on all 24 units to now 20 at 80%, 2 at 60, 2 at 30, and eating those costs, that they're a local developer, a local company, employing local people, trying to make their community better. I think that's what we're trying to see. It's consistent with the coalition's recommendations to work with a private developer to increase affordable housing stock. Would it be nice if every project could be 60% AMI, which I think is more reflective of what would actually be affordable in Plymouth? Yes, but I don't think that's realistic in the current economic situation that we're in. And as was pointed out by the presenter, it makes a big difference if you're one of the people that's going to get one of these 24 units, that we didn't wait around for some better deal to come around. I know, it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of time to get to where we want to be with affordable housing, not just the 10% for the subsidized housing inventory, but to provide that service to residents. But moving that needle forward, I think, is important to constantly do. And the finance director, I've heard arguments about the debt service and that it's too much. Although I agree the debt is high, although I agree that it's something to keep an eye on, she's not currently concerned about the debt that they have, that this is unsustainable, even if all these projects were approved as requested. And those that know Lynn know that she's pretty conservative with her estimates. So if Lynn's not concerned about their ability to pay these bills, even with all these new projects, then I'm not concerned about it either. And I agree that certain opportunities, whether it be affordable housing, whether it be open space or historic preservation, they come up. That's why you don't want to overburden your CPC with debt, so you have that flexibility. But as long as we're sustainable, we should be able to move on these projects, because that's the whole point of the CPC. So for all those reasons, I will be voting in favor. Thank you.
I have a question. What would the rent be in one of these so-called affordable units?
Yeah, so the maximum 80% one bedroom, and I'm going with round numbers here.
That's fine.
I'm not the
I'm not
expert
gonna
in the
write it
group.
down and come after you.
It's approximately $2,200. Then you deduct utilities from that, so it's down to in the 2,000 something range, 2,080. I will say historically that and I believe this is 100% accurate, we do not have a single affordable apartment in our repertoire that we charge the maximum allowable rent. We're slightly below that.
Okay, you said one bedroom, so are there two-bedroom ones?
Not in this comp, they're all one
Okay,
bedroom.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna
No,
ask you, how much those are?
I wanted to be clear that this is one bedroom, that's the one bedroom rent. And again, do I think it's affordable? No. Can you build them any less without assistance? No. I mean, it's just the reality. I mean, the cap rate on these projects are very, very low. We look at it as a long-term piece, and, partly for lack of a better way of putting it is a donation, and it works like that. If we were building this for market rate, I would never do this project with that rate of return. It's just not worth it. I mean, there has to be a cause behind this to make it worthwhile.
Okay, I just have one question for Lynn. I don't know if you know this one, Lynn, and if you don't, it's fine. What's the most debt the town's incurred in the last 10, 15 years? Do you know what I know we stopped it back on the board years ago. I mean, has it been 20 million or 10 million or?
I'm not, are you on an annual basis?
Yeah.
Okay, so our debt service is about 6 to 8% of our annual operating budget. And that's the level that we live within, you know?
No. I mean, the CPC borrowing.
Oh, CPC,
Yeah,
okay.
It's never,
I mean, what's off your head, I know you're not looking at it, and it's
I
unfair,
mean,
but,
right now, it's probably at the highest. that
okay,
it's
that's all I
been.
wanted to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so as you heard the vice chairman said, I got the floor, thank you. A minute ago was that, it was, this and it was that, and I get it, but my point is this, it's the highest it's been. And I've been around a little while, and it's nothing to do, believe me when I tell you, of what you're proposing, Rick, and I respect everything. And I'm gonna be honest with you and say I can't support this, and for the reason you just heard the answer that she gave me. It's the highest, the debt, it's not your project. But for me to sit here and just keep saying it's okay, I'm concerned. I'm concerned for, the people. I think we need to get our nest debt, I think we need to pay some of the debt down and then start up, look at our plan, revitalize it as we are doing with the building committee with some of the projects. And what happened in the housing, I'm not gonna throw stones at them either. It happened, I wasn't here for it, but I am here for it now. And, it's just me. You hear other people are gonna support it, and that's what we do. That's why there's 5 of us. But for those reasons, mainly the amount of debt we have right now before this, I'm out.
Can I make one comment to that?
You absolutely can.
So just humor me for a second. So there's a guy walking down a beach, right, and he sees a woman hurling things into the water. And he finally gets up to her and says, "What are you doing?" There's tens of thousands of starfish all washed up. She's throwing them one by one back in. He says, "Why? Why on earth would you possibly be doing this? You can't make a difference." She hurls one more in and says, "Well, it made a difference to that one." That's the philosophy behind that project and any other project we do.
Thank you. Mr. Bletzer?
Lynn, question for you, again, sorry, on this, I respect what Chairman Quintal asked, but when you say dollars and cents, percentage-wise, is this the highest, percentage-wise, debt? Because we obviously, we're taking in 4 million, we weren't taking that in 10 years ago.
Right.
So
I
the
mean,
debt, so in other words, the 13 million that we have in debt, percentage-wise, is that the highest, or was it higher years ago?
The authorization is the highest that it has been, the authorization to borrow. We haven't borrowed $14 million, so we're not, our debt service is not at a huge percentage of our annual operating revenues for CPA. What we do is we try to minimize the amount that we borrow and have a small interest payment, but pay down, use the annual revenues to pay down
Right.
on that authorization so that we don't borrow. So that's the plan going forward for these projects and the ones that exist.
But again, are you concerned that, about us paying for this?
No.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Bletzer?
Yes,
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
no.
And myself, no. 3 in favor, 2 in opposition. Thank you. Article 13?
Article 13 is affirmation of the annual town meeting article, which was 16B of 2024. There was, although all the documents were correct and all their numbers and all the information, at the town meeting, there was verbally some comments made that were not correct. And therefore, I believe it was the board that thought it was best that everybody look at it again and affirm it. There was a confusion on the total number of units that would count towards our SHI out of the units that were there. And although if we had a project where they were all rental, and there was 24 units, and we bought 6 of them, you could get credit for all 24. But these are, some of these over there are owner-occupied homes, so they weren't all rentals, so they didn't count towards that number. But like I said, all the documentation was correct, everything that they voted on was correct. The wording was off, so we thought it'd be best to bring it back to the board to reaffirm. And to the board, and to Mr. Chairman, too. I'm new to the committee and a new chair. There's quite a few people on the committee now that are new. We aren't an island. We are going to be listening, especially to the finance director and to the board. We need time to cool off, and we believe we'll probably be doing that. So just so you know that I hear you every time.
No, I'm just me.
Yes.
I have to, ask the questions. It's not the first time that that I've been on a board where we actually put the brakes on and paid some of it down and, move forward. But, I'm sure, I'm not questioning whether the town can afford it. I'm sure once it gets voted, they're obligated regardless. But, if anything comes out of it, it's gonna be a good, healthy debate at town meeting. And that's, after it leaves this desk, that's where it goes.
Yes.
So. But thank you. Mr. Mahoney?
So just building on what Mr. Bradley was saying, of the 3 articles that town meeting voted on a different version that the committee saw, what the committee voted on in this case was accurate data in the application. So I want to apologize to Mr. Veo. He shouldn't have been exposed to this. Going back to town meeting a second time around, I do want to say it's 6 units, 960,000.
Yes.
The money is in hand, so this is not creating any debt. This is a 50% vote, not a 2/3, okay? So this money is sitting there in the respective buckets, waiting for this project. Okay, and then the other thing is, as we mentioned earlier, or I mentioned earlier, we should have a revised application for affordable housing in the future, and we will see more detailed information with respect to how many units, how many of the proposed units are going to go towards the community's SHI, subsidized housing inventory. Are they rentals? Are they owned? What is the AMI? And then have somebody review that at the town level and sign off on it so that when it gets to the committee, we know with 100% certainty that it is accurate.
Basically housekeeping, cleaning up, right? That's what we're doing. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none?
I would make a motion that we recommend town meeting approve Article 13.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Canty, second by Mr. Golden. Discussion? Mr. Mahoney, Mr. Golden.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just note that this article was crystal clear on town meeting floor. I think the chairman of the CPC is correct in that the discussion is what muddied the waters, and town meeting overwhelmingly voted in favor of this. 102 people voted in favor. I was one of them, and I'll continue to support it here tonight.
Anyone else? Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Blitzer?
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Golden?
Yes.
And myself, yes, unanimous.
Thank you.
Article 10, open space, Black Cat Road. Thank you, Mr. Vale.
Yeah, Article 10 is an open space article. It's a purchase a little over 93 acres of open space. The location is Black Cat Road and Watercourse Road. The purchase can be made for $1,150,000. This is active cranberry bogs at the time. There just happens to be a state grant out there that will pay 90% reimbursement if we take cranberry bogs out of production, cleaning up the water, getting rid of any of the fertilizer or pesticides and things like that would go on its normal active, if it was active cranberry bogs. David Gould has got all the information on that and can answer and make a great presentation and answer all the questions for you.
Good evening. For the record, David Gould, Director of Energy and Environment. I think the chairman did an excellent job of explaining that proposed acquisition. The proposed acquisition, if we are successful getting the grant, the cost to the town would be $115,000 for those approximately 90 acres. The ultimate goal of the project would be not only to acquire those cranberry bogs, but restore those as we've done on several sites, Eel River, Tidmarsh, Foothills Preserve. The benefit at this site is it's in the upper part of the watershed, so we would be able to improve water quality for impaired waterways that are downstream. So that would be Billington Sea, Townbrook, and Plymouth Harbor. As an example, we did the multi-million-dollar restoration at Foothills Preserve. That cost the town $45,000. That was our contribution to the $2 million project. That was from environmental affairs funds and paid for the plantings. We're following a similar trajectory on restoring the Capel Pinnacle bogs, and I suspect we would follow a similar trajectory if we were successful in acquiring this land and doing a restoration there. So I think it's an excellent article, and I hope you support it.
Mr. Blitzer?
David, is this the property or the land where they were talking about doing solar?
That is correct. This is on Black Cat where there's
Yeah,
some existing solar back
They were
further
gonna do
on
solar, right?
on Jason.
okay.
Yep.
That's enough for me. You got my vote, so I'm all for it.
I just have to ask David, could you give us like the fast version of how you clean it up? I mean, did they take the stuff out of the bog? I know naturally it's the chemicals and how all that works and the flooding, but
Are
what
you
actually,
asking-
like the ABC, I
Are
mean.
you asking me to talk about restoration before the board? That would be fantastic. What an opportunity. So yes, we would we focus on restoring the hydrology to the wetland. So as you know, most of the time, these cranberry bogs have been heavily manipulated, and they oftentimes have sand applied every year or every other year that they've been in production, creating a lot of separation between the natural peat layer and the hydrology, the groundwater. And we're able to turn that over, fill in ditches, restore the natural hydrology to the site, activate the native seed bank that's in there, and you get a huge diversity of wetland plants, which of course brings all the diversity of insects and reptiles and amphibians, and restore fisheries habitat as well. Oftentimes, if it's a run-of-the-river bog like Eel River or Tidmarsh, we can do a lot of fisheries improvements. So we've had great success doing that. I think we've created some really nice habitat, but at the same time, these are sites that people love to walk. We utilize the old cart paths that go around these bogs, and oftentimes they're some of the most heavily visited sites that we have.
Thank you. And the reason I also ask is not just for the board, but the people watching at home, so they, get an idea of what we're trying to do.
Sure.
So I'm going to support you naturally on this, but. Mr. Canty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So David, there's no map attached with this, so I'll rely, but it is a large parcel in terms of 93 acres. So are there, I understand the conservation restrictions with CPC, they're very strict. I get that. And I am in full support of restoring it back to its natural majesty as much as it can be. But are there is this parcel located in a location where any water infrastructure would be beneficial for the town, like a wellhead, pipes, anything like that? Just because the CR with CPC is so restrictive that if that would be a benefit based on its
Right.
location or any of its other attributes, that would be problematic, so.
Yeah, so it's about 90 acres. We worked with Makepeace to do some division. They have a couple of garage buildings on the property that we didn't want, so they did some subdivision to carve that out. It's about 90 acres total, approximately 75 of which are the cranberry bogs, so it leaves about 15 acres of upland. So part of the appraisal was you could probably get 4 house lots in there. So there's only about 15 acres of upland, so if you were to try to put a wellhead, you wouldn't have the necessary Zone 1 acreage without drawing down wetlands or adjacent ponds.
Okay.
So in terms of the actual location, it's good for ecological restoration, but not particularly good based on its limited upland for putting a public water supply well without impacting, Billington Sea or Briggs Reservoir or the adjacent wetlands. So DEP wouldn't even allow you to permit that. We also wouldn't want to put a well in such close proximity to former agricultural land based upon what may or may not have been used there.
Sure, okay. and to the chairman. So, Chief, if in the future, well, number one, it would be nice to have maps of the future. I'm used to being able to visualize what the property looks like. But one thing that was difficult in the past with that CR is, I guess, do you think the CPC in the future would be amenable to working with DPW or other entities in the town, not for this parcel, but for other parcels where water infrastructure, other town infrastructure may be beneficial, to carve out those types of allowances, obviously where it makes sense, where it's appropriate to do so, without, countermanding the overall objectives of the CPC for open space?
As long as it's within the scope of the law that we operate under, and
Yes.
it's for the best of the town, and it's something that, they can bring forward to us, absolutely, we will work with them.
That would be great. I
Absolutely.
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Mahoney, if I can, John, just while we're on the subject. I've asked staff to, Derek and the staff to do the water master plan for the future well sites and where we might need them throughout the town, so we don't run into this situation that you're talking about, whether it be whole tack or, they're gonna lay it out for us and come back with a plan. That's what the water department's doing right now, so.
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
I agree with Mr. Canty. There has to be a map, a baseline map included in certainly at least the town meeting members' packets, if and when they receive it. Just a one-pager.
Yeah. Any deficiencies in the application were not the committee or the chairman, that would be my responsibility, so
Yeah.
I can certainly make sure that there's better
That's-
maps provided in the future.
Oh, no, I appreciate that, David. Timeframe on the announcement from the state with respect to the grant?
Approximately mid-August was what we were told.
Last August.
Yeah, I'm hearing that there is, what I'm hearing is there is going to be a grant announcement. Hopefully it includes this grant this coming Monday. I hope that is the case. As soon as I know, I promised Lynn I will let her know, and the chairman, I will let him know, so hopefully Monday.
All right, and we've already approved admin note number 4, where you're applying to the, I think, the DER for $700,000 for the Pinnacle restoration.
That is correct.
So the Pinnacle, how much, what's the acreage on getting restored there?
14
Sure.
acres,
$700,000 for 14 acres getting restored.
correct.
So now you're looking at 75 here. Are we a year or two away from you applying to them for this grant, if this gets approval in October?
We're probably about 18 months to 2 years, fair amount of design based on that acreage. And there's also some additional complexity in that it does lead down to Billington. So we really want to do a good design that also has a lot of work focused on nutrient attenuation, because we do want to focus on improving water quality downstream. So Pinnacle is an isolated kettle hole bog, doesn't go anywhere. Black Cat's a little more complex.
And there's going to be a much larger price tag associated with it, right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Mr. Mahoney?
I'll move approval of this article for October 2024 town meeting for,
Second?
Second. Motion by Mr. Mahoney, second by Mr. Canty. Discussion. Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Blutzer?
Yes.
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
yes.
And myself, yes, unanimous. Thank you. Article 11.
Article 11, you're going to like. Article 11 is open space recreation. It's to purchase 15,771 square feet of land to increase public access to White Horse Beach, including parking and improvements consistent with recreational purposes. It's 277 Taylor Ave and St. Charles Ave, and also what's referred to as the Full Sail Building. The grant request is for $875,000. David can give you a really good briefing on this one. What is the price to buy it? Purchase price?
$655,000.
$655,000. And the rest of the money is to mitigate the building that's there and do some work to actually create that beach access and get rid of an eyesore that's been down there a long time, and a building that I myself have visited at the early morning hours putting fires out.
Late night, too.
Yeah.
Any, Mr. Mahoney?
So again, even though this one is small in nature, it is fairly significant, okay? So the community for at least 20 years has been chasing this. Kudos to Mr. Bletzer, you know, for his outreach and delivering the goods on this one. Having said that, I know, you know, I was in this room, I don't know, was it a week ago Thursday, David? You know, 60-plus standing room only for the presentation, predominantly dominated by Whitehorse Beach or Manomet residents, but we got to make sure that, you know, there's a map included in the town meeting members' books when, you know, before we get to October, so they know what's going on here. But I fully endorse this one. You know, you've advocated for the 220 on top of the purchase price of the 655, and can you just go into what you envision that 220 covering?
Sure. So, as the chairman mentioned, the appraised value of the property was $655,000. The request before CPC was $875,000. There's $220,000 in there. That would allow us to abate the building if anything is found in it, and primarily lead paint or asbestos, demolish the building and dispose of it, and then do some of the site amenities. So that would be things like putting in some protective wood guardrail on that site, sidewalk, getting people into the site with walkways, some shade sail structures, and access down to the beach so that they can utilize it, make it more accessible, ADA compliant. So benches, landscaping, those kind of things would all be paid for out of that $220,000. To your earlier point about the public input session we had, I said to the public we would have a plan. So by the end of September, we're working with engineering, DPW engineering right now on that. So we will have something that will be that'll be ready to provide to everyone to see it. We'll show a layout of the sidewalk and the shade structures and the proposed access down to the beach. So we're working on that now.
Mr. Bletzer?
David, thank you for all the work you've done on this. You've done a great job. We've had a few meetings, and they were a little heated, but in the end, people calmed down. And I've talked to, after the meetings, after all 3 meetings that I was in, I had conversation with neighbors and some of the opponents, and some of the requests they have, we're gonna take care of it. We're gonna alleviate their concerns, and I think they're gonna be very happy. And there are a lot more positive. Some of the real opponents. There's still probably 1 or 2 that will be against it, but it's a great project. They're gonna see that you've done a lot of work on it, and one of the concerns was the money. You weren't at the meeting at Advisory and Finance, and they were going to have to come back for money. And I assured them that you've done projects like this, you've done Stevens Field, you've done Nelson Park, and you're going to bring this in under budget or on budget. And I'm confident in that. And one question, if we talk to the handicap, that there's a fund out there, the money, the handicap money, I know the PGDC gives them most of the $300 tickets, $200 tickets for handicap parking. So if we talk to them about accessing some of their funds for that handicap ramp, and that will save us on using some of the CPC money.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to them yet, but to your point, if we get allocated this funding, we have $220,000 to work with. That's what we have.
Right.
So that's what we have available.
No, I know, but we might even be able to get more.
Right, exactly. If we need to find more
Right.
money, we'll find more money.
Yeah.
One of the questions that came up at the public input session, to your point, was, has the town ever done anything like this before? And we've done multiple park projects. After that meeting, I actually went back and I counted all of the building abatement and demolition projects that we've done over the last 22 years, and it's 32 different buildings.
Yeah.
So we've done that process
Right.
32 different times. We know what we need to do there. We also, one of the questions was, well, you haven't done any testing, and we typically don't do testing on a building until we own it because it's somewhat destructive. Now, this building's a little bit different in that it's in rather poor condition, but as you know, we did reach out to the owner,
Yep.
and we asked if we could go in and sample the building and get some results prior to town meeting, so we can give them a better number as to what it will cost to abate the building if there's something in there. So we sampled it last week, and we should have results in the
Right.
next few weeks. So we're really trying to provide as much information to answer the questions before town meeting even occurs. But if something is found, we know how to get the abatement done and get the building demolished properly and follow all the regulations. We've done it 32 different
I'll
times.
tell you of my confidence, because everything I've asked, I get some of these residents, and they have some good concerns, and I bring them to you, and no problem. It's part of the plan, you incorporate in the plan, and when that final plan comes out, I'm very confident it's gonna be a great plan, and people are gonna really enjoy it, the residents. So, great work, and I can't wait to get this through, guys like Al Donato in the front row there, and Steve Lyden, and and Mr. Malaguti. Hopefully, town meeting will listen
He's
to them.
FinCom now.
And you're not in town meeting? Okay, sorry. But they'll help us get it through town meeting, and we get this project. And I went out on a limb saying that once this gets approved, we'll have it done by July. I know you didn't like me saying that, but I'm confident you'll get it done. I've seen you in action. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? I just want to echo John, Charlie, Selectman Blutzer. Very nice job, and by all involved, but Charlie got the deal done. Now I want you to deliver on the state park, please, Charlie. Let's put a little heat on it, Charlie, all right? You can do it now. And not to get way off the path, but through the, Charlie, the PGDC, the money off the handicap citations, that's dedicated for, exactly. So you might be able to, eventually apply for some of them if you're looking to do a ramp or I call it a mat, that's probably the wrong term, but they have a fund just for that, and it's dedicated for that, so,
David, would you like me to explore that? or-
yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
No, we can certainly do that. We worked with them to get the beach mat down at Taylor
Okay.
Ave over to Whitehorse, and they also helped provide some funding for the wheelchair swing recently
Okay.
at Stevens
If
Field.
you don't
So
mind, I'm going to make a call to the PGDC. And,
I would be fine with that.
okay, and I'll let you know, so.
Yeah.
all right? You get so much going on, so.
Thank you.
Can I have the floor back, Mr. Blitzer? No, Charlie sat on the PGDC as well as I, so, and I thought that was there.
Great.
So, good job. Any other comments or wish of the board?
I'd make a motion that we recommend town meeting approve Article 11.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Canty, second by Mr. Blitzer. Discussion. Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Blitzer?
Yes,
Mr. Golden?
Yes.
And myself, yes, unanimous. Chief?
Article 12. Article 12 is to amend Article 16G of the annual town meeting to reduce the fiscal year 25 community preservation annual debt budget.
They did that under admin notes.
Oh, you did? Okay, so
Yeah,
you
it was
don't,
just administrative.
It's just the Douglas.
we're all set.
Great.
That was the
Thank you.
easy one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to speak under public comment? Please come up and identify yourself for the record. Make sure the green light's on, please. That's what I was asking, and that's what I got
Mr.
for
Chair.
an answer. So I
Mr.
didn't
Chair.
say anything.
There's another agenda
All
item.
right, hold on a second. All right, let's,
Sorry.
there's one more on here, the Douglas Gray Playground at Stevens Field.
Hello again. For the record, David Gould, Director of Energy Environment. Thanks for having me here tonight. I'm pretty excited to actually provide this recommendation to the board. So those of you who may or may not remember Doug, he was the park superintendent in Plymouth for 26 years. He actually worked for the town for 34 years. When the A.K. Finney building was located at Stevens Field, his office was actually down there, so Stevens Field is a very meaningful place to him. When we were constructing the new park and doing the playground, we started discussing the thought that it would be really nice to dedicate that playground in honor of Doug and all of his work on behalf of the town. In the packet that I provided to you, there are some emails from some of his former employees. There's a email recommendation from Nick Viola, the current park superintendent. There was also a unanimous vote of Precinct 3, where Stevensfield is located, to support naming the playground in honor of Doug. And I would hope that the board would vote to do so.
Questions or comments? Mr. Mahoney, then Mr. Canty.
And David, remember Precinct 3 is where it all began.
It is.
Yeah.
Having said that, I didn't grow up in the community like some of the others, of my colleagues here, and I believe Mr. Gould, but I wasn't here when Mr. Gray was an employee of the community, but since I've been involved, we run into each other a few times a year, and we have some pretty passionate, interesting conversations. And I know he's now, an octogenarian, and he runs a hell of a kayak business out there in Morton Park. But he's a wonderful individual and certainly, deserving of this acknowledgement.
Mr. Canty?
So just to be clear, I have no issue, obviously, with Mr. Gray, it being named after Mr. Gray. I didn't know him, but obviously there are still employees 23 years later that think very highly of him, his contributions at the time and since then, so probably a good idea. So the playground would be Douglas Gray Playground and the total park would be Stevens Field? That would be the name?
Correct. Yeah, we were not proposing to change the name of the park. That will, I think, forever be known as Stevens Field to the people of Plymouth, and we weren't looking to change that.
Okay.
But the brand-new playground, we would like to name in honor of him.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Will of the board?
Make a motion to approve the request to name the playground at Stevens Field, Douglas Gray Playground at Stevens Field.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Canty, second by Mr. Bletzer. Discussion. Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Bletzer?
Yes.
Mr. Canty?
Yes.
Mr. Mahoney?
Yes.
And myself, yes, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also like to just thank Mr. Golden for all of his help in this process with the Memorials Committee and getting this before you. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Golden. Public comment, here we go.
Mr. Chairman, Al Denaro, Precinct 17. I know you folks made a lot of decisions, and I'm just reminded of something I heard this week from Henry Truman.
Mike?
Al Denaro, Precinct 17. As you're making tough decisions here, I'm just reminded of something I heard this week about Harry Truman's son talking about his father, and a staffer came in and said, Mr. President, we have to solve this problem, but if we go at Plan A, the Democrats are going to be mad at us. If we go at Plan B, Republicans are going to be mad at us. And the President says, well, what's this right here? He says, well, that will solve the problem. But both Democrats and Republicans are going to be mad at us. So public office is very difficult. I'll cut to the chase, Mr. Chairman. I know this week your board will be executing the warrant, the town meeting warrant, and closing that. I had a petition article, Article 32, which did not make it on the warrant under a technicality. That's fine. It's still legal. I'm going to gather signatures to still support for it. And the article read that this would be a bylaw that all caucuses would have public comment. And I think that's important. I don't think anyone's against that. So I'll be working on that. I will go before COPC to ask them, in the meantime, waiting on this bylaw at the next town meeting, that as a courtesy that they would do that at their meetings. I'm the type that could go out and get 100 signatures and call a special, but I think we have a very busy agenda. I just wouldn't do that. So I'm willing to wait. And the reason why I had to do this is, as we know, that Red Brook article we heard tonight, and it took some time for the town, it was like a battleship to really turn and get our mind around that. And I'm always one that believes any information is good information. If you could tell me how to build a better wheel, let's build a better wheel, let's show me. So we were trying to get that information out there. Our last two caucus meetings, last three caucus meetings before town meeting, the first one had public comment. After that, the last two, and I'm not going to speculate why, but public comment and new and old business was not allowed as that new information was coming down. The residents were panicking because the alternative for that Woodbrook article would have been more apartments. So, but nevertheless, over 100 town meeting members finally saw the facts, but it was contentious. As a matter of fact, I had to put a video. It was 30 letters. I just don't want to see that happen again. We shouldn't be airing that dirty laundry. We should be discussing it when the caucuses. Folks should be able to come up. We want to encourage people to participate. I know the talk is about getting people involved. Most of us are involved with neighborhood issues. Maybe it's a neighborhood issue we first get involved, and then it propels us to town meeting and others. So public comment brings down the fear factor. This is their government, and they should be allowed to do that at caucuses. So I will speak this Thursday at COPC. I'm just serving the board notice and the public notice what's going on with that article, and thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Yes, hi, my name's Larry Hartinian. I live on Federal Furnace Road, and I'm a member of Plymouth for Palestine. I'd like to describe our process so far. We submitted our Gaza ceasefire resolution with appropriate signatures. Signatures were verified, and we were added to the town meeting warrant as Article 31. Regarding this body, the Select Board, we attended the August 20th meeting. We wanted to be on the agenda, and for that reason did not say anything during public comment. After the meeting, I approached the board. Mr. Blitzer asked me what I wanted, and I told him who I was, the group I was part of, and that we wanted to be on the agenda to present and discuss Article 31. I heard nothing for the following week. We attended the August 27th meeting and again foolishly did not speak during public comment because we wanted to be on the agenda. After the meeting, I approached the board and asked the chair, Mr. Quintal, to be on the agenda to present and discuss our Article 31. He told me he would have to check with council and would get back to me. I had no idea why he had to check with council to put us on the agenda, but nothing more was said. I did not hear back from Mr. Quintal. However, the town meeting moderator had rendered his opinion that day that our article was outside the scope of town meeting, even though we did not receive his opinion until a week later. But looking back, it seems plausible that the select board members received the moderator's opinion that day, and that was the basis of Mr. Quintal's remark to me, and perhaps a cryptic comment made toward the end of the meeting by Mr. Canty to the effect that some articles were not likely appropriate for town meeting, and the select board would not have to consider them. So it remained until today. Regarding the Advisory and Finance Committee, after the above, we were pleased to see that we were on the agenda for the Advisory and Finance Committee for September 4. After sitting through about 3 hours of the meeting, we were informed by the chair, Mr. Neerman, that based on the opinion of the moderator, which we had just received the day before, our article would not be entertained. But at a courtesy, we would be given 5 minutes to speak. There were 2 of us to speak, and after the 5 minutes transpired, my companion was told she was done and had to stop. I then asked for my 5 minutes and was told I did not get any minutes. Finding it highly irregular to be excluded from an agenda that we were on, we stuck around for public comment when I made a very brief 5-minute presentation on the full statement I had prepared, and that was that. There was no questioning of either of us, no discussion of our statements or articles. Done. Not only were we shocked and offended by all of the above, but I was taken aback when I read the minutes of that meeting. The remarks of my companion were completely ignored, not mentioned in the minutes. Under public comment, when I spoke, the single word in the minutes was none. That is, in addition to being prevented from speaking before the Select Board, the remarks that 2 of us made before the Advisory and Finance Committee were 100% excluded from the minutes. Apparently, in the historical record of the town, we weren't even there. It didn't even happen.
Excuse me, it's over 3 minutes. Do you have much more, sir?
No, I have, take totaling about 5.5 minutes. Now, to briefly back up. On September 3rd, 2024, we received the moderator's opinion stating the issue is outside the Plymouth Town Meeting scope of authority. I will not accept any motions. I emailed Mr. Trifletti saying he provided no explanation why it was outside the scope of town meeting. I asked how and why some cities and towns in Massachusetts can entertain such resolutions and at the same time it be outside the scope of Plymouth Town Meeting. I asked for a substantive explanation and legal justification for the moderator's statement. The moderator did not respond in writing, but we did speak on the phone. In that conversation, Mr. Trifletti stated that the town charter and bylaws indeed said nothing about excluding articles from the town meeting warrant, rather they only noted what was to be included. He stated that the reason for excluding our resolution was precedent. He further stated that he would not reconsider. After again consulting the Plymouth Charter, bylaws, and Mass General Law, I followed our conversation with another substantive email. I told him I categorically disagreed with his decision. I said that I agreed with his remark on the phone that these legal documents said nothing about any authority to exclude consideration of our article, nor did the documents say anything about any discretion to exclude our article. I stated that precedent is not inviolate. I further stated that to the extent that such claimed precedent is nowhere defined, his exclusion of our article could only appear to be arbitrary. I concluded stating, based on the above, that I felt he had to retract his statement regarding the outside the scope and his refusal to entertain any motion. Concluding. In light of the above, I asked the Select Board to inform the moderator that our Gaza ceasefire resolution, town meeting article, warrant Article 31, will be considered and voted on at town meeting. If, to the contrary, the Select Board agrees with the moderator, it is essential to explain on what authority you can exclude us and promptly provide us with a full, clear, and legal explanation for this action. After everything laid out above, you owe us and the town of Plymouth a response and an explanation. I ask that this statement be included in the meetings for this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd appreciate a response.
Thank you. We don't respond to public comment, but thank you.
That's very cute.
Jade, is there anyone else?
Who
Mr.
may I give
Malaguti?
this? There you go, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everett Malaguti, FinCom. First time saying that. So I would want to go back on a remark that the chair said earlier during the discussion on the CPC articles about when projects are being done to make sure that it's a holistic approach and that we're not looking at the town's assumption that the DPW can do this or this other department can do that. And I'm just hearkening back to another CPC article in our neighborhood when we constructed the new entrance to Veterans Field, that when we did that, the steering committee discussed and everything, and we were making it so that would be less maintenance for the DPW, because at that time there was a lot of stuff that was going forward, and we were asked to make sure it was minimal upkeep and all that for that, and we obliged to that. So we agreed that all the projects that are coming forward have that same mindset, and we're not just saying that certain areas of town should have that mandated when a project comes up, and then others can go elaborate. We want to make sure that it's all uniform, because at that time it was sort of focused on us saying, make sure you don't make this too elaborate for that, and other projects are going forward that were much more entailed. So I do appreciate and agree that that should happen. I wasn't going to speak to this, but since it was just brought up, the last speaker that was just here, there was a question raised at the last ANF meeting that we were actually talking about the articles that were no motion, no action on that, and we did ask the chair to ask the moderator to come in at a future meeting to have a discussion with us about the parameters of that, and that some of us on the committee felt, disregarding beliefs and articles, that we felt that some of them may not have been as appropriate action taking, and that's why we wanted more clarity on that for going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak under public comment? Seeing no one, nobody online. Town managers report, Mr. Gennaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since tonight you'll be getting an assistant town manager report, I'm going to try to keep it brief and just give you informational points to you and the public. Starting with the Department of Energy and Environment, they have a construction project at Jenny Pond that is set to start next month, and they expect to be completed on April of 2025. This project, the work will entail some dredging as well as repairs to the footbridge. Additionally, they're going to start a construction project to repair the harbor boardwalk behind the lobster hut, and are expected to begin late this fall or early winter. Moving on to the DPW, they're continuing road work on the President's Roads, Eisenhower Way, Hoover Street, Kennedy Parkway, and Truman Avenue. The work there involves reclamation of the road, which is where they grind the entire road all the way down to the base and use those grindings to create a new road base, which could impede traffic. So we encourage folks that if they have any questions about the project or think they are going to be affected, or they have deliveries coming in at a certain point in time, to contact the DPW so that they can schedule that and work and coordinate with them. Additionally, work has started on the construction of bump outs at the intersection of Alden Street and Standish Ave. So bump outs, essentially what they do is they extend the curb and the sidewalk out at crosswalks onto the roadway, creating a minor island at intersections that serve to, as traffic calming measures. And the town is doing this project with funding from a Complete Streets grant that we received from Mass DOT. And finally, the Parks Division is also planting 500 mumps at Brewster Gardens starting tonight. And this is part of their waterfront, in Brewster Gardens and the waterfront area. And this is part of their seasonal beautification work. Additionally, the finance director asked me to mention to everybody that the deadline to receive applications for the Elderly and Disabled Tax Donation Fund is October 1st. As you're aware, this is a program offered by the town to our elderly and disabled residents who are going through financial hardship as a measure of relief in the form of reduction to the real estate taxes. Grants are awarded based on the amounts available in the fund and the amount of applications we received. So as a reference, last year we awarded 8 grants of $1,000 each to said residents seeking relief. And finally, the hot topic in the last couple of days has been EEE. So as the town manager mentioned last week, the town of Plymouth staff was part of a meeting with representatives from the Mass Department of Public Health, as well as health officials from other towns to continue the discussion on EEE. The 3 highlights of that meeting were, firstly, the DPH highly stressed, that the town of Plymouth is following the nighttime guidelines issued by the department. Their opinion is that other communities should also be following similar guidelines and rescheduling their evening activities, but that each community in Massachusetts by the law is allowed to act independently. They also stress that while the case occurred in Plymouth, these issues are not limited to town borders and are instead indicative of a risk spread over a larger area. Hence why Carver and Middleborough are also considered high risk, even though they don't have a human case in those communities. Secondly, the reason that the DPH did not elevate the town of Plymouth's risk level to critical is because the positive human case that occurred in Plymouth occurred later in the year and not during peak mosquito season. Another community that had a human case had their case occur in July, which the DPH's historic data shows that would provide a higher likelihood of another case occurring because of, being peak mosquito season, being a warmer weather. So this was taken into consideration as well as other environmental factors, why they kept us in high risk level. But they stressed again that this does not constitute a reason for us to lower our guard, and that they instead are gonna be looking into different language that they could use so that folks don't feel like critical or high are different levels, and that at all times there should be remain guard and follow their guidelines. Finally, the DPHs, they told us that their historical benchmark for lowering the risk level was tied to waiting until they had a first hard frost, until we experienced our first hard frost. The comments that I got, the thought that I gathered from those comments were that they were very conservative. They said, well, when we have our first hard frost, that's where the risk ends, so we're just gonna wait for that. And instead, what they're doing, in their interest of working with their town, they're willing to take into account other factors in order to determine when to lower the risk for Plymouth. So that includes monitoring when temperatures start lowering and begin cooling down around dusk, instead of just waiting for that first hard frost to happen. So we will continue working with them because they also agreed to meeting every other week with us, so we can continue monitoring the situation, monitoring how the temperatures are dropping around dusk, and then based on that information, making a determination on when to lower the risk for EEE. Additionally, we want to take this opportunity to encourage the residents of our town to reach out to the DPH directly for any information. They have a lot of good information on their website on how to protect yourself from EEE, as well as contact information for their epidemiology division, which is running the EEE program. But we like to stress the fact again that we are following the guidelines of the department, and they're continuing to encourage all communities affected by EEE to follow state guidelines, which include avoiding outdoor events during dusk and dawn, because that's when mosquitoes are most active. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Janeo? Mr. Bletzer?
Silvio, I have a question, and by the way, great report, filling in like this.
Thank
Very,
you.
very impressive. So
Thank you.
I just have questions. I know the next meeting's not for a couple of weeks. If something happens in the meantime, that we could change the status of this, will they let us know that? Because I know there's a lot of, the youth, the football team specifically, we saw them come in here. The kids and parents are very concerned that they would love to have their Friday nights under the lights. I understand it. I have a daughter on the dance team. She feels the same way. But I know safety first. But if something happens before the 2 weeks, will they let us know? Or is that something that, are we going to monitor this?
Yeah, I would say that basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the guidelines they gave us today, start documenting the temperatures during dawn and dusk, right? And what those temperatures are, and then starting to have those discussions with them and see if anything could change. But what they told us is that they're willing to meet with us every other week instead of once a month or what they were planning on doing before, and in the hopes that we can get to a point sooner rather than later where we can lower the risk.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Janeo? I just have two questions, Silvio. On the bump outs, that's what I'm calling them. How does that affect like the snow plows? Are those, I've been hearing rumblings already. So I know, have an engineering degree and DPW background, so can you?
Absolutely,
I mean,
unfortunately
we're
for
gonna
me
mark
in that
those a certain
situation.
way so that.
Absolutely, unfortunately for me in that situation, I'll step in, but in the future, I'll defer to the DPW director. But yeah, so basically what happens is where you had 2 straight curb lines, now at the intersections, you'll have 2 bump outs that narrow the intersection, and basically the plows just have to be aware of that. I'm pretty sure what we do in the past, and when I worked at DPW here and in other DPWs that I've worked at, the folks who have those routes become familiar with that situation. They might put some cones or markers or something, so if you have a foot of snow and you don't know where the curb line is now, the new curb line is now, they have some sort of guidelines. So I'm pretty sure the DPW director will be discussing that with the staff so that we keep them safe.
Yeah, even, how they mark the hydrants with those.
Correct.
Those rods, so maybe something like that till we all get used to where they are. And the second thing, you touched on the senior tax relief. And there was a program, I'm not sure the proper way, but somebody did call me and ask me how they apply, like they could work like in the clerk's office or tax,
Yep.
and work off their taxes. Do we have that program? And if so, how does the senior actually apply for that?
Absolutely. That is, what you're referring to is our senior tax work-off program. So we basically receive applications depending on the need for the departments to have seniors to come in and work hand in hand with town staff where necessary. And instead of the seniors or the applicants getting paid, what they do is their time counts as hours that go towards their tax, their real estate taxes, and that gets deducted from the real estate taxes. So, yeah, any person, I don't remember off the top of my head the application deadlines, but any person who's interested in applying for that program can reach out to the town manager's office or the human resources department, and we'll certainly get them in touch with that information in the application as well.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none. Thank you, Silvio. Selectmen discussion, new business? Mr. Blitzer?
I just want to report, speaking of seniors, let me just report on my new position as the liaison to the Cal Center of Active Living, to their advisory board. I had my first meeting last week, and I'm going to tell you, I was very impressed. It was an honor to be there. What a great board they have. Led by Michelle Brady, the director. You know, her enthusiasm and energy, it just goes right through that board. It's a great group of people. They were very efficient and very organized. You know, they have entertainment committee, they have a marketing committee. But the most impressive to me was the statistic committee. The woman in charge of that, I forget her name because I just met everybody, most of them. But what an incredible report, the stat she has. And a couple of things that really impressed me, and I want the board to know, is over 59,000 people go through those doors every year. The money it costs per person is 17 cents per person. That's how much funding they get, 17 cents per person that goes through there. It's amazing what they do with their budget. And then we talked about the volunteerism, the hours, almost $1 million in work hours by the seniors donated from Cal in different parts of Plymouth. It's amazing. So the place is a gem, and the two things that I identify, the two needs that you may be hearing about if you haven't already heard, is that space and money. They need more space, and we talked about whether to go up another floor or to maybe go to a different part, open up another center in a different part of town. And that's something that could be discussed, and whether it's worth just making it bigger where they are, so you don't have to add too much more staff. But that's something for discussion, but I think we really have to take a look, this board, and really trying to support them in the needs that they have in the future. And the future's, it's right now, so I wanted to report on that. The other thing I want to say is I want to give kudos to our DPW director once more and his crew. I got a request of some of the neighbors down at the point at White Horse Beach, down by the condos. That ramp down there was kind of washed out. It needed to be repaired because of the weather. This beautiful weather now. A lot of them have boats down there. So last Friday they went down with 2 days' notice. They went down and they fixed it. And one of the neighbors called me and said, please let them know what a great job they did. I think in the spring they got to come back and probably do more work to it. But that was a temporary fix, and they did a great job on it. So I just want to give DPW, Mr. Coyle, I think Tim Balboni might have been involved too. Give them kudos for the work they do. So anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Anything on the letters? And Old business? Not seeing any, I just want to add that, a thank you to all that were involved in the 9/11 ceremonies and, for everybody that showed up, and I have to say, I was extremely proud and happy to see that all the town staff, was actually there, and it meant a lot. So I just want to say I didn't go unnoticed, and I thought it was great, so. And to all those others involved, I can't name them all, but I did notice a lot of staff there, and it was nice to see, so. And a lot of us were there also. Next meeting will be held, well, actually, tomorrow, just for a Zoom, to execute the 2024 annual fall town meeting warrant. Did I get it right? You did. Other than that, I think that's well, and if there's any public comment. So, looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you for watching. Have a good week.